I'm James Clark. I'm the director of the Mexico Business Center at the San Diego Regional Chamber of Commerce, and thanking you for being with us today at our various panels. I also want to thank particularly our title sponsor, San Diego Gas and Electric, Warren. We greatly appreciate you being here, because without you, we would not be here, or else we would have to charge $300 or $400 a ticket, and people probably wouldn't want that. Thank you, SDG&E. Also, I want to thank our government sponsor, the County of San Diego, and our host sponsor, the Transborder Institute here at the University of San Diego. You know, for too long, San Diego has not paid close attention to the manufacturing powerhouse that has been building just a few miles south in our sister city of Tijuana. Companies like Bose, Delphi, Eaton, Leviton, Kyocera, Mead, Panasonic, Plantronics, Philips, Samsung, Smith Medical, Sanyo, Great Batch, Nipro, CareFusion, Hunter, Gambro, Sony Foxconn, Qualcomm, Medtronic, Solar Turbines, and you get the picture. Tijuana has amassed a manufacturing sector that would be the envy of any place in North America. And they're here, and they're with us, and they're part of us. And why does San Diego really care? Well, there are two main reasons. San Diego businesses can be a part of the supply chain, making products and offering services to these companies. That's what this morning was about, because that means business growth and jobs creation. But secondly, companies in Tijuana provide those good, high-paying, sustainable jobs for their employees, who spend, and it has been estimated, up to $3 billion a year in San Diego. So that's why we promote Tijuana. We love all of Mexico, of course, Mr. Olive. However, if companies locate in Monterrey or Guadalajara, we don't get the residual benefit here in San Diego. Now, to wrap up what we've learned this morning, and please go ahead with eating, because we want to make sure we get you out with some semblance of the day left. I'd like to welcome the president of the San Diego Regional Chamber of Commerce, Ruben Barales. No, please, no applause, please.
Now you're embarrassing me.
And the president of our partner, DATAC, the Tijuana EDC, Jaime Gonzalez Luna. Jaime? Yeah. Tocayo?
Whatever. Yeah, great. So we're going to try to be brief. Want to thank you all for being here, and again, obviously thank SDG&E. So our team was taking notes, and we tried to condense it into something that's legible. It's obviously not going to be all-inclusive, but just some key points we want to emphasize and things to work on, and there are a lot. So as you all know, we have the 4 panels that we had today. Thank you all for participating in them, and I'm going to turn over to Jaime to talk briefly about the first panel.
Hi, everyone. So the aerospace and defense panel, you know, the 3 basic items that we got from there was integration. It's very important to integrate. And also the comment was that 90% of the investment comes from Asia and Europe. And that's also a wake-up call for the region, for the U.S. and Mexico. We need to find new ways to finance projects. And also a point that was mentioned, and that's something that we need to work on, is the ITAR. We need to see it as an inhibitor and see ways to help that, you know. So that's regarding the aerospace.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jaime. The next panel, clean technologies. There was a point made that the U.S. and California specifically are incredible opportunities, markets for clean technologies. So it's a place that companies want to be in our region, serving the market. That Mexico has excellent manufacturing capabilities and some advantages, including being in the same time zone, English-speaking professionals, and the issue of IP protection obviously is important, and you don't have some of the challenges you might in other parts of the world with IP protection. And also, Sempra is the largest private investor in Mexico, which was a fact. Whether it's true or not, I'm not sure, but it was a fact that was put out there during the panel. The other panel was the emerging technologies. We talked a bit about education and talent, both key ingredients to the success of this mega region, that there are over 20 universities in Tijuana, obviously a number here in San Diego as well. But we did talk about the need to strengthen the partnership between U.S. and Mexico universities, and also to emphasize local STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and math, for our students on both sides of the border so that we can remain competitive on a global basis in the region. Also, transportation was seen as a plus. Transportation infrastructure generally, we have the port, we have 2 airports, we have a good road system, but we do need improvements in all of those, and there was special requests made for a need for improved rail service to help really make us even more competitive in the global marketplace. Supply side, many of us are here because we want to supply goods and services right here in the region, and the case was made for need for Tier 1 suppliers, that we need to help our local businesses figure out how to become Tier 1 suppliers so that we can keep much of that business here. And then another challenge for us to look at are tax policies on both sides of the border, and we often go back to Washington, D.C. and Mexico City to talk with federal officials. Just an example was Mexico's tax structural changes, which I wasn't very familiar with, but it's a very interesting challenge that I think we all need to take a look at on both sides of the border, again, to make us more competitive. And next panel.
The next panel was the medical devices and biotechnology, and one thing that we talked about was the travel warnings. The warnings are done in regards of the whole country, and we need to just give the scope of the areas that there's trouble. So that's one concern. The other one is that an advantage that most Mexican facilities are registered with the FDA. Also, the Mexico needs to expand in research. We need to put more emphasis in the research, and also we need to improve the connections with the clusters or organizations on both sides of the border. And when I say both sides, is 3 sides, because it's just Canada, U.S. and Mexico is very important. So we need to make the connections with those agencies, business organizations, manufacturing organizations in Canada, U.S. and Mexico to start moving breaking the inertia.
And then you have your final panel you're going to mention.
Okay, for the final panel, we didn't have time to put it on the presentation, but there were some interesting things. One of them that I liked a lot was willingness. And we have people in the previous panels from big, huge companies in Baja California, and they're willing to open the doors for new vendors, to open the door for the supply chain. So we have the presence of Toyota, Plantronics, Medtronic, etc. So one is willingness. The other one is local knowledge is very important. Other one is the due diligence. That's also very important to act on the due diligence. And the channel or the step that we want to make is first to make the connection, second make the distribution, third make the innovation. We need to promote innovation in everything we do in these 3 countries, and then we can go to different markets. We need to forget about being competing with Asia. We need to use Asia assets to our advantage. So the word here is, if you want to be great, be competitive. If you want to be exponentially better, be cooperative. Okay? Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Jaime. Thank you all. And we do look forward to working with each and every one of you on the issues that pertain to your companies, your industries, on both sides of the border, and with all 3 of our economies, Canada, U.S., and Mexico, to make us the most competitive place in the world to do business. Thank you very much, and enjoy your lunch.
As Ruben said, enjoy your lunch. But at your tables, there are cards and pens to put down questions for our speakers. So if you would like to write a question for Mr. Olive and for Secretary Camuñas, please do so, and then we will collect them right after the entrees are served. And after they have spoken, then we'll be taking some questions from the audience. Mr. Olive was here with us all day today. Thank you very much. We appreciate him attending the seminars. The Secretary was down at the Otay Mesa border crossing, looking at the situations that we have there. So we also appreciate when Washington does come out and take a look at one of the great inhibitors we have, which is the free flow of traffic. So thank you, enjoy your lunch, and we'll be right back. Thank you again for coming today. If you have questions that you want to ask the government of the United States or the government of Mexico, just hold them up and they'll be picked up. If during their speeches they say something that you want to ask about, you could do it at that time as well. As we've been here since 8 o'clock this morning, we're all winding down a bit, so we're getting a little bit informal. But first, I would like to introduce our first keynote speaker. Luis Olive was appointed head officer of the International Trade and Investment Unit at ProMexico in February of 2010. As head of the unit, Mr. Olive is responsible for all international operations of ProMexico, including its 33 offices around the world, designed to attract foreign direct investment to Mexico. If you have not seen ProMexico's magazine Negocios, which have been out in front, I highly recommend that you do so. As a former magazine publisher, I am envious. It is excellent. Mr. Olive was founding partner of Banesta, a multi-level distribution and financial services company with operations in Mexico City, Toluca, Guadalajara, Querétaro, León, and Cuernavaca. From March 08 to March 09, he served as a consultant in the area of multi-level distribution of insurance and investments at Banamex. From August 2003 to November 2007, he was director of e-business, including e-channels and e-products at HSBC, and participated in the development of the internet as a distribution channel for products. I'm not sure in 03 I even knew what the internet was. At AT&T Latin America, Mr. Olive worked as corporate director of sales and corporate director of strategic planning from May of 2000 to May 2003. During this time, he participated in the definition and coordination of network expansion plans and was in charge of regional sales of clients based in the United States and local networks with the telecom network requirements, and managed sales teams in Colombia, Peru, Chile, Brazil, and Argentina from the capital of Latin America, which of course is Miami. Mr. Olive is an industrial engineer and a graduate from Universidad Iberoamericana and holds an MBA from the London Business School. Please welcome Luis Olive.
Thank you. I didn't even remember all of that. I'm amazed with myself now. And I've got this new little thingy, and if you ask for it online, they will put your name into it, so I asked for it online. And suddenly I got a delay of 1.5 weeks because it was coming in from China, of all places. But soon enough, we will have it from either Mexico or the US. Definitely, no? I brought in yesterday from my office a small little speech. And today and last night I found out what we were here for, no? So I'm gonna chuck to the bin my little speech. And I'm just gonna pull out the ideas and the things that I've saw, because every time I step somewhere, I really learn things. And I think this is about that, about learning, no? About hearing you guys and about hearing the communities and the solutions to problems, no? I really want to thank the organizers of this venue. I mean, James, thank you very much. Ruben, Dean William, he was briefed this morning, but the university is an amazing place just by driving in, no? Miguel Velasco, I meet him every time so often from Tijuana. Jaime Gonzalez Luna too, no? I mean, good promoters of the region. And my good friend Ann Batcher, who spent yesterday 3 hours crossing the border. Me, myself, I arrived from Tijuana, and I got the solution for you guys. You need to get in contact with Alberto from the consulate and with Officer Fong Hua. Just put these guys with every crossing and we'll solve the problem, no? I mean, I was through in half a minute, I don't know. Consul Remedios, thank you for being here. Marcy Grossman from Canada, very good idea to bring in the NAFTA again, no? Canada, U.S., we forget things, no? I mean, and obviously, Assistant Secretary, I'm honored to be here with you, no? I mean, Michael Camuñez. And of all people, I also met yesterday Malin, no? Malin Burston, where are you? He had to leave, but he's an icon. I mean, he was telling me how he brought in the America's Cup and all of this. I mean, you should really pull into these types of resources, no? I mean, because it's a question of bringing in and joining and creating, no? My office, obviously, Mario Juarez, Gilberto in Tijuana, and our brand new president of the council, Luis, no? Luis Echeverria. Thank you, wherever you are around here, no? I just jotted in some ideas because I don't want to be, at the end, everybody's tired and everybody's hungry and everyone wants to go, no? So I'll just jot some ideas of what I see, no? Although I'm young, I'm not that young. I've been on business so often, more so with San Diego and Tijuana, with gaps of around 10 years. I was here at the beginning of the 90s with the opening up of the telecoms sector in Mexico. In fact, I spoke with Qualcomm, and we were purchasing a company that was acquired by Telefonica. I was working for MCI, and I saw Tijuana and San Diego, and I felt that it was a very polarized situation 20 years ago. No, I mean, San Diego one side, Tijuana we crossed to the other side. We saw the antennas of the first investments into wireless networks, very precarious, very dirty, and that was my impression of Tijuana. No? A dirty city, a city that just received the leftovers of a nice city like San Diego. Then I came in 10 years afterwards, and things do seem to change, no? And Tijuana became a little bit more greener and a little bit more livable. And and my last trip to the region, well, before this one was like a month ago, where I really went into the different places. I went to Mexicali. I didn't believe people that it was so hot. Amazing. I mean, I don't know how people can live there, but they're happy, no? You know. But then I was amazed with Tijuana Innovadora. Tijuana really grew, greener even, more livable. We had dinner at night in downtown. I was very happy having the original Caesar salad. And truly, I found a nice city, a beautiful city. So this is the idea of things that can be done. In Tijuana, that was to be very aggressive 3 years ago. Today, you can walk the streets at night. You can live, you can work. I think Tijuana is a great example of things that can be changed and can be gone for the better. No, San Diego, very similar, very nice city. Still, the crossing not too good, unless you have the agent Hua. But we have to think on both ideas of doing things different. Yesterday night I was thinking, how can you get the cities together? No, I mean, the cities will converge at some point, with or without the government of Mexico or Canada or the U.S. They will converge because they're close together. No, it's a question of when and how and for the better. No. But we have to think on different ways to do things. Before, computers had only one processor. Today they have two and more, the famous Intel Core. And if I become too engineering, sorry, that's my upbringing. No? But that's what we have to do. We have to think on both sides and do the crossovers of things. No? I mean, convergence will arrive. I have some statistics of San Diego and Tijuana. By the year 2020, they will have the same populations, both of them, very similar. So they would be the same size. They would be the same capabilities, I think. So it's a question of convergence. How many cities this size are together in the world? Not many, really. I was thinking yesterday, I mean, twin cities where, I mean, Windsor and Detroit. I think they've done a good job. Maybe we can get some good learnings from them, no? A lot of manufacturing going across the border, back and forth. I don't know other twin cities like that with that type of capabilities, no? But let's look at those success stories, no? In Mexico, we have some of them, just intra-country. Maybe we can look at that. You have some in the U.S., no? We have to see it for the convergence of things in the U.S., in Tijuana and San Diego. What is similar between both countries? I'm really amazed. Yesterday they spoke about convergence of the European Union. I had some numbers from the European Union. I'm sorry if I dismiss or if I tell somebody that yesterday said some numbers that are not the correct ones, but still. 27 countries. 27 countries with 26 languages. You've got 12 currencies. Somebody said yesterday one currency, that's if you think of the euro, but you've got the Swiss franc, you've got the pound, you've got, I was in Sweden the other day, I didn't know that Sweden had the corona, no? 6 time zones. That's a lot, 6 time zones. And 400, all of this just for 494 million inhabitants. So it's really pulverized, no? 21% of GDP of the world. And these guys could do it. All of these numbers, and they could mesh them all together, and they've been trying to do it. Obviously, they have these problems right now, but I do believe they will succeed and they will move forward, because I do believe in opening and in trade blocks. And I think things will happen. But if you compare it with us, I mean, this is 3 countries, no? I mean, 3 countries, the languages very similar, 2, almost 3, with my friends in Quebec. But we're Western. When I go out and do business in Asia, many of my clients are coming back to Mexico. Powerhouse in manufacturing. Some investors, a company called Getrag, a transmissions company from Germany, large company, went out to China because they said they want to do cheap things and be competitive. They came back running. And these are German people. I mean, these are tough from the tough people in the industry, I mean. And they came back to Mexico because they like their loyalty, they like their skills of the Mexican engineer, no? And we're like that in Mexico, but we're like because we learned it from the US and we're Western. We like our sport teams, we like our beer. I think Mexico is the largest consumption of per capita of beer and of Coca-Cola. I mean, how much more American than that, no? We get married, we love our families. I mean, we're really very similar. And above all, we like working. I think work is one of the greatest value of Mexico and the US. You can say so much of so many things, but if you touch on work, I mean, people get touchy, you know? I mean, and because of that, we can get together, no? I mean, also Canada, no? Obviously, no? I see in California and in Baja, very independent states. Almost to the point of being rogue, the rogue states, no? I mean, my God, Baja California is not connected to the Mexican grid. How much more independent can you be, no? And truly, because of that, Baja California has been the pilot and the laboratory of Mexico for different businesses and initiatives. And it should be for this one. You should take profit of that. And get closer to Baja, to the governments. I've seen all of these messages around, no? Get close to the governments, the local government. Will help you in the federal government by far, definitely, we understand. And now I understand more the 2 cities and the capacity of these 2 cities, no? Yesterday I was saying that we in commerce and economy should be away from politics. We should be listed in the stock exchange, no? We should be measured by the markets and by profitability. I still think so, because I'm not a governmental officer, no? I'm a business guy. And Ferrari brought me in with that sense of pushing up the business, putting everything into a CRM system, and pushing the guys with a goal to close up businesses. Not to stay in the arguments of just arguments. Go for the business, go for the clothes, go for the number of dollars into the country. And I believe we're doing a good job. And if I compare that Europe with our trade bloc, truly, 3 countries, I think it's 4 time zones, and because the US is very wide, but still, I mean, very manageable, no? And if you stop there, we can also think of south. Somebody said this morning, you can also think of south of the border. You have all Latin America on the same time zones. You got Brazil. I mean, if you put all of those together, Europe, Asia, what does that mean? I mean, the income per capita is huge. Somebody said the expectations of the economies for the next, I think, 2050, no? I think Jaime, no? And Mexico will be top 10 by far. If you take the income per capita of Mexico, I think it's 14, adjusted, it's 14,000. If you take the demographic bonus, we are 26 years old average. Just in 30 years, we will get up to, I believe, 60 billion. Well, sorry, $6 trillion in GDP. $6 trillion in GDP in the next 20 years will make us a top 10 economy. And we're just right beside us. We're not small today. We're 1 trillion. When I travel around, some people tell me, oh, but Mexico should be a little tiny country. No, I mean, it is not a tiny country. I mean, it's half of the GDP of the UK. The thing is, they compare us with the US. Obviously, the US is still a very large economy, no? But we're similar to Canada, no? And people don't acknowledge that. Large countries, large internal markets, and very good educated people, I believe. I think the solution to getting both cities together should be thought about of new ideas, specific projects. When my guys, I've got 33 offices around the world, and they complained every day if the system goes up or if the system goes down, and if the ambassador is happy or not, and if the conditions of the country are to invest or not to invest. What I tell them is just focus. Focus in projects and in things to be done. Really, this venue is very good, but it has to be bigger. Bigger next time. I think it's every 2 years. I want to be here and feel it grow. But then also put some goals to it, no? What are we going to develop? I don't know. Go crazy. I don't know. A cross-border marathon with Mr. Chu at the front for him to cross, no? And I'm a runner. That's why I got these crazy ideas, no? A biocluster. This morning somebody said, there's a biocluster in Baja California. A guy from the industry. He didn't know that there was one in San Diego. That tells me that the cities are still polarized. They are still polarized. San Diego's for living, Tijuana for working cheaply. No, we're still polarized. We have to get together more. But bioclusters, I think that's one that we should look for and put a name to it. And it maybe has to cross across both cities. Half of the biocluster here, half of the biocluster there. I mean, Maylin Borhem said this morning, why don't we get, how do we call it, when you test, clinical trials in Mexico. And they just disapproved his idea because it wouldn't be approved by the FDA. Well, what about if you open the clinical trial center in Tijuana and you fill it with Americans? I was going to say a bad word, but, and you fill it with Americans. Can that be done? Maybe yes. Maybe yes. They come in, they do the trial for 6 months, and they come back. It's just a question of putting the FDA and the COFEPRIS together and look for solutions. Or maybe, as I said, a clinical trial, half one side, half on the other. Different capabilities on both of them, no? But just be creative, no? The aeronautic side is, I mean, Baja is the most invested zone in the world of aeronautics. I mean, you can see turbines, you can see planes. And in fact, there's no, I was in Brazil 1 month ago, and I went to Embraer, no? And they told me, you want to build a Mexican plane. No, that's not our idea. Truly, it's not our idea. In fact, today, we're building the best Mexican Canadian brand plane made out of carbon fiber in Mexico. I don't want the Mexican plane. We already have one. Be crazy, I don't know, do a football team. I don't know, soccer or football, both. Yeah, hockey. Yeah, why not? The icebergs from Tijuana, yeah, I don't know. Or maybe, very recent, we did the Olympics for the Americas, yeah. In Guadalajara, very successful, very successful. Why don't do the Olympics between both cities? That's been done before, I think, in a World Cup between Japan and Korea, no? Things like that. We have to be really creative, but get them together. Get the two cities, well, they're already together, I mean, that will happen. Just, but go into the levels of complexity and build a plan, definitely. It has to be a plan, it has to be very well thought of. We have to see the SWOT analysis of both cities and see where we can profit of strengths, the weaknesses. I haven't seen that. I really haven't seen that from any of the cities. I can maybe think of that. But being a businessman, that will help us, no? U.S. companies in Mexico, if you didn't know, from 1999 to 2010, $133 billion of investment. That's a very large number. More than 50% of FDI of my business comes from the U.S. So I'll be here very often. And you've got very good integrations. Citibank bought the largest bank in Mexico, Banamex. Great integration. At some point, Banamex became 20% of the revenues of Citibank. And you don't see that quarreling or, I lost my bank. No, it's just efficiencies. Walmart has 1,400 plus outlets. I cannot think of 1,400 cities in Mexico. I mean, it's the second largest operation for Walmart. People don't really believe or acknowledge these things. GM is there with 13 plants. Ford is there. All of the large companies are in Mexico already, expanding, and none of them has come back saying bad experience or I shouldn't be there. I mean, they've been there for ages and growing together. Mexico has been attracting a lot of investment because we've done, I think, good work. The macroeconomic is controlled. We haven't had large inflation since 15 years ago. We're out of the crisis. Somebody said this morning also that the US and Mexico came out of crisis very fast. We're geographically in the center of the world. I tell this to all investors and they tell me, no, that's what they told me in China, you know? Between America and Europe, yeah, they're in the center. But then as an engineer, I went into the numbers and I calculated the time to send goods from a global operation. Large company sending goods all over the world. Well, Mexico has a 20% upside, even from the US. It is in the central geographical center of the world for a global operation. And I can show you the numbers, so I don't have them here. But we have better quality of manufacturing. There's a study of the OCDE, and I would wish to give it to you. I mean, it's a study that measures the quality of parts manufactured in the countries of the OCDE. Mexico is in the 5th place of the OCDE. After Switzerland, after Hungary, somehow they got in together, but Mexico is 1 place above the US. Nobody believes me. 2 places above Germany, and 4 places above Italy, and like 20 places, and Canada. Who's number 1? Are you number 1? Good. See, partners. But it's amazing. People don't really realize these things. Brazil at the very far end. This is a commodity-based economy. This is not manufacturing. Chile, a very nice country, very first world of the Latin countries, at the very far end. Yeah, they're commodities. I was amazed with that, and I can circulate that with you. So people don't really realize these things. And this morning, people were saying, don't focus just in labor and the cost of labor. Really go and see the qualities and the talent pools. Mexico is graduating 100,000 engineers per year, same amount as the US. And in Mexico, being an engineer does change your life. Mexico and the US, we've got Cemex, we've got Bimbo. I think they've just acquired Sara Lee. America Mobile, Telmex, they're operating here. Gruma, and the list is still very large. So we've got the ties, we've got the investments, we've got the business people. Why was ProMexico created? To foster this investment. In the logic, we've got 33 offices abroad, very concentrated in NAFTA, 8 offices in the US, 3 in Canada, 32 in Mexico, 1 in every state, and it's to help all investors. Somebody was asking, the Irish guy, where is he? Are you Irish or Scottish? Well, sorry. Well, similar, no? Got close. There you are. I'm going to give you my card because I'm going to help you land into Mexico. I mean, that's a simple answer to your question. And we've got 32 offices to help you in the country and 33 abroad. Because we understand the logic of investment in the world. It's not only by one country. I had an investment from an Argentinian investor and a Chinese operator to build airports in Mexico, and they were going to a bid. I used my office in Buenos Aires, I used my office in Shanghai, and we tried to bid for that airport. It's not only one country, we have to be global. Mexico believes in openness. We have 44 free trade relationships with 44 countries, with 12 agreements. I think it's one of the largest or most open economies in the world. And it hasn't shrunk. It has only grown, I mean, for the skeptics, no? I see opportunities in aeronautics, in life sciences for this block, for these cities. I see opportunities in retirement and medical tourism. I think people will cross the border to get medical health insurance if they cannot pay or not, but with quality. I took notice, and very good that Jaime and the guys just made a summary. I took notice of many things that you said, and the security wasn't that big of a deal. No, I mean, real investors understand that it's a business, no, and Mexico is getting better, no, and it'll get better. I took some notice for me to take, and I won't, but there's some things that caught my attention. No? Martin Vasquez said passion, and once when you get passion, you can do things. I can see people here with a lot of passion. I mean, you don't stop in retirement. You continue pushing for the relationship. You believe in something. Keep on doing it. Use the shelter system. Create this medical cluster. The border can only get better. I also took notice of that. No, I mean, yeah, it cannot get worse. And this is good. What can we do for this reality, no? The demographic bonus. Take profit of the demographic bonus of Mexico. And the US is not that old still. I mean, I think 37 years old is not. So you'll still have a little bit of bonus. Certification of fluidity. I mean, we have slashed, in the federal government, we have slashed down 14,000 red tape tramits. How you say tramits? Transactions, just in this term. That's half of it, because there used to be 36,000. It can only get better. We're doing our job, but it takes time. President Calderon is very, very focused. Innovation, I heard that a million times, but we have to do it. We have to bring in the laboratories. We have to get goals. What are we going to do with innovation? Are we going to build the next generation of turbines? Are we going to find the cure to cancer? It should be great if it could be found in this city, no? I took some notice of government electricity, government becoming more of an enabler of business. And I just took notice of 4 cents versus 14 cents in Mexico. Really bad story. I have to bring it back now. And the tax issue also. Simplify the taxes. We have to be simpler and simpler. I lived in the US, I lived in Mexico, and none of them satisfy me. Really bad. And linked to the talent pools. Linked to the talent pools. I think the word link says a lot. We're not linked. We're still a little bit polarized. You can see it in the border. You cannot have Officer Chang or Hung or for everybody. And I see four points just to close and leave the scenario for Michael. We have to go back to values. I mean, truly, America as a bloc has to go back to values, and that will undermine the security issues because it's a co-responsibility of both countries, or 3 countries now. Back to values. No drugs, no use. Back to family, back to being good guys, hard-working people. We have to push the communities. We have to be creative, as I said. I mean, do something crazy. Build a stadium in the middle of the border. Do a marathon run that crosses around. Break the paradigm. Because we think very much in the sense that we've been thinking for the previous 10, 20, 30 years. And as you said, we won't get different results if we do the same things. I think that was said by Einstein, in fact. No? And create a plan. Truly, we have to draft a plan for these 2 cities. That must be Cillian. I mean, you're going to tell me, it's already drafted. Create it. Do the SWOTs. Where's the strengths? Where's the weaknesses? Where are the opportunities? I think that's about it. I thank you very much. I thank you for this venue. It's a great learning from your both cities, and I'll keep on coming and see the progress. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Luis. We appreciate your words. Now it's my honor to introduce Michael Camuñez, who was nominated by President Barack Obama and confirmed by the U.S. Senate to be the Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Market Access and Compliance with the International Trade Administration within the Department of Commerce. The Assistant Secretary helps to coordinate the Commerce Department's efforts to create jobs here in the United States through the National Export Initiative, which I know we'll hear about. Secretary Camuñez, disculpa, helps to lead an effort to open new markets for U.S. goods and services around the world. Before joining the Department of Commerce, he served in the White House as special counsel to President Obama and served as special assistant to the president, where he worked on issues related to executive nominations and appointments. Before joining the administration, he was a partner in a law firm in Los Angeles, where he represented Fortune 500 companies on domestic and international commercial issues. A graduate of Harvard College and Stanford Law, he also served as a senior policy advisor for national service in the Clinton administration, where he helped to establish the Corporation for National Service and its signature program, the AmeriCorps. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome, it's our pleasure to have Michael Camuñez here with us today. Please welcome Assistant Secretary. Thanks, Michael.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Buenas tardes. Still awake? I hope. Just a little bit longer and we'll have you out of here. Thank you very much, Ruben, for that kind introduction, and thank you all for the opportunity to be here. I was sitting next to Luis, and I said, Luis, give a good speech, but not too good. So I don't think he took my advice. It's a hard act to follow. I want to join Luis in beginning my remarks this afternoon by extending my appreciation to the Mexico Business Center and to the San Diego Regional Chamber of Commerce for hosting this second annual North American Competitiveness Conference. I know from my colleagues in Washington that this event was very, very successful last year. And I think, as I understand it, really came out of a meeting in Washington at the Commerce Department. Big ideas sometimes actually do come out of Washington, but as usual, it takes local communities to make it happen. So congratulations and kudos to you for making this happen a second year. We're thrilled to be a part of it. I want to also recognize our distinguished guests, the consuls general who are here from Canada and Mexico, and of course, I won't go around, but all of our distinguished guests who are here, thank you for being here. And I want to thank also SDG&E and Sempra Energy for providing the title sponsorship for this event, as well as the University of San Diego and many of the sponsors who are here that made this possible. I know you all don't want to hear a long speech, and I apologize in advance that I do have some prepared remarks. I'm not as good on my feet as Luis. I don't have any good one-liners and good jokes, and I know, especially after lunch, the last thing you probably want to do is hear a long speech. So I'll try to make this brief, but I do want to give you a framework, some understanding for what the United States government is trying to do, what the Obama administration, working in partnership with Prime Minister Harper in Canada and President Calderon in Mexico, what these governments are up to, what your governments are up to try to call attention to the promise of our shared border and our shared prosperity as three great nations. I also want to point out that I think this conference is especially timely, and I'm grateful to be here. I know that Secretary Bryson, our new Secretary of Commerce, very much wanted to be here. Unfortunately, he is on the job 2 weeks, and he's on his way to Hawaii for the APEC Leaders Summit, where I'm headed tomorrow. He asked me to please convey his regrets and his regards, and hopefully in a future event we'll get the Secretary out here. But this conference is timely because the subject of North American competitiveness is going to be on the agenda in just a few days in Honolulu, when the presidents of these three great nations get together on the margins of the Asia-Pacific Economic Conference and convene another North American Leaders Summit. And I won't say too much because it's not appropriate for me to get ahead of our leaders, but be assured that one of the major issues they'll be discussing is how to deepen and promote North American competitiveness. And I'm looking forward to having the opportunity to report on some of the good work that happened here in San Diego. Of course, strengthening our economic ties and facilitating cross-border trade among our three countries will help to deepen the North American competitiveness and improve our collective position in the challenging global economic environment that we face today. So events like this, I think, today are very important in that effort. We share many goals and values as a region. You don't need me to tell you that, but I do want you to know that this is something that I really get personally, apart from my professional responsibilities as the Assistant Secretary of Commerce. I have a personal connection to the border. I was born about 30 miles north of the border in Las Cruces in the state of New Mexico, close to the El Paso-Tijuana border. I've spent a good number of years here in California working as a professional in Los Angeles as an attorney at O'Melveny & Myers, representing many companies that have business engagements in Mexico, Canada, and internationally. And so I really get in my bones how important this trade relationship is. And one of the reasons that I've come today on my way to Hawaii to the APEC Summit is because I think it's very important that we get folks out of Washington and down here on the border to see just how important this relationship is and to see what an important driver the border region is to our national economy. So it's a privilege to be here today to discuss North American competitiveness and to share with you the many ways that our countries are working together to reduce regulatory barriers, to facilitate cross-border trade through infrastructure improvements at the ports of entry, and to accelerate the flow of goods and people across our shared borders. I want to first begin, if I can, by just giving you quickly some background on the role of the Commerce Department under the President's trade agenda. As the Assistant Secretary of Commerce, I have the responsibility and privilege, really, of working with our trading partners worldwide to advance the goals of the President's National Export Initiative, or the NEI, as you've probably heard it referred to. Now, like the American Jobs Act that the President's been discussing extensively and that he's pushing Congress to pass, the NEI is a key component of the President's economic recovery plan. And through the NEI, we're working hard to open new markets overseas for U.S. goods and services, to double our overall exports by 2014, and to deepen our strategic trading relationships around the world, all with the aim of growing the economy and putting millions of people back to work. My primary responsibilities under the NEI entail working to create the conditions and the business climate. I like to call it the ecosystem that fosters and promotes trade and investment as a driver of economic growth and prosperity. And so this includes working on policy initiatives to develop the legal and regulatory framework that's necessary to support trade and investment and to promote innovation and competitiveness on worldwide, but in this case in Canada, the United States, and Mexico. A big part of my job is to help businesses like many of yours who are in the business of trade overcome the barriers that keep you from competing effectively and from growing your business. So that's what's brought me here today, to develop with you, to understand better the innovative solutions that keep us, that are necessary, I should say, to grow cross-border trade and increase global competitiveness on both sides of our shared borders. Let me put this a little bit in the context of what our leaders have been up to. In 2009, at the North America Leaders Summit in Guadalajara, our leaders came together to, among other things, promote global competitiveness in the region by working together to accelerate economic recovery and job creation and building a strong base for long-term prosperity. In their joint statement last year, and as you know what happens, the leaders come together, they host a summit, and they articulate a set of policy priorities that the three governments will then work to implement over the course of the year. And they articulated in their joint statement last year that our integrated economies are in fact an engine of growth, and they highlighted investments in advanced technology and border infrastructure with the goal of creating really truly modern borders which facilitate trade and smooth the operation of supply chains. And they also made specific recommendations on reducing unnecessary regulatory differences, which I'll say about in a moment. And in just a few days, the leaders will get together again in Honolulu, as I mentioned, for the next North American Leaders Summit. And they will be building on a wide-ranging and ongoing discussion involving cooperation among our three countries, with a particular focus on competitiveness, including border facilitation and regulatory cooperation in addition to many other issues. Now, more than just priorities agreed upon by our heads of state, the North American relationship is evident every day, as you know, in the strong bonds that the three societies share. This is reflected in the thousands of students and teachers and researchers that are participating in exchanges between our schools and universities, and the more than 1 million people who cross our borders every single day. So, as we know here, well, we're friends who share borders, but more importantly, as Luis was saying, we share fundamental values and a commitment to our three countries. Now, I have in my prepared remarks a bunch of statistics about the strength of the trilateral economic relationship. I'm going to spare you that. Suffice it to say, you know better than anybody just how important this economic relationship is to the region. And and I'm going to say it, since NAFTA, all three countries have grown dramatically. Our trade has deepened profoundly. Investment has risen significantly, and all three countries are better off. And I don't think probably many regions appreciate that more than San Diego and Tijuana. So I want to start by saying that I think trade has been good. It's been very good for both countries. And of course, we want to see that relationship grow. And this is why the President is so focused on trying to grow the relationship as part of a jobs agenda. As you know, since taking office, despite the fact that the economy had shed 8 million jobs and was losing 750,000 jobs a month, we've grown the economy by about 2.5 million private sector jobs in the last 18 months. But the fact is, it's not enough. Too many people are still struggling. The economy is facing huge headwinds, and nobody's satisfied with the progress, including the President. And he's out there every day working hard to improve the situation. And that's why this administration has recognized and embraced the fact that trade is a vital element of our economic recovery. And we've embraced the trade policy agenda because we recognize the benefits that it will bring to American workers and their families. The more goods and services that that our businesses export, the more they'll produce. And the more business they produce, as you know, the more jobs that they'll create that workers need. And that means jobs for the United States, Canada, and Mexico. And so far, we're off to a good start. This National Export Initiative has several elements. We're trying to promote increased access to financing, double down on efforts on trade promotion. We're looking, as you just saw, we've negotiated, we've completed and put forward these 3 pending free trade agreements. We're diving headlong into the next Trans-Pacific Partnership, which will be discussed at the upcoming APEC Summit. And we're moving on multiple fronts on the trade policy agenda. And all of this, I think, is paying some dividends. Already in 2010, for example, U.S. exports of goods and services totaled about $1.9 trillion. That's an increase of about 17% over 2009 levels. And exports have been growing at a strong pace overall in the first 6 months of this year. They're up about 18% over the same period last year. And of course, the numbers for our 3-way trade are equally strong. Total trade was up about 16% between Canada, Mexico, and the United States last year. Now, the statistics are more than just numbers. It's easy to just sit here and quote statistics, but they matter. They supported almost 10 million jobs last year. That's up from about 8.7 million jobs in 2009. And these are good-paying jobs. I think, as you all know, export-related jobs, trade-related jobs pay on average of about 15% more than the typical wage in America. And these are exactly the kinds of jobs that we need more of. When we export more, it also drives our manufacturing base. Manufacturing jobs decreased for about 12 years between 1997 and 2010. And in 2010, for the first time, we created a net increase. We created about 250,000 manufacturing jobs in this country. So that's progress. Now, is it enough? No, but we're working hard to keep that moving forward. In the first quarter of this year alone, exports accounted for about 13%, about 13.5% of all U.S. economic output, which is the biggest portion of our economy since the Commerce Department began tracking these figures in 1947. Now, that sounds great, but when you realize that China has about 40% of its economic output, and Germany has something somewhere, I think, in the 30s. Don't hold me to that. But we're significantly behind. And we want to see exports grow, not just in absolute terms, but as a percentage of our overall economic activity and output. So we have to do more. That's the bottom line. And we're working hard to do that. So let me just take just a couple of minutes to tell you what we're trying to do, because I think in the context of this relationship in particular, it's important to have the broad policy framework in mind, but I want to just share with you a couple of specific things that we're doing with respect to Canada and Mexico to help you understand what our policy priorities have been and to get your thoughts perhaps in the Q&A as to how we can do more. The first issue I think that really is most relevant when we talk about trying to deepen strategic trade is trade facilitation at the border. Now, let me just back up one quick second. When I came into this job, as Ruben mentioned, I was at the White House first. I came over in the Commerce Department. I was confirmed almost a year ago, a little over a year ago. And when I walked into this job, the thing that really surprised me was the extent to which our policy discussions were so focused. It didn't surprise me, but it was a wake-up call. We're so focused on China, India, Brazil. And here we were launching this National Export Initiative, and we had an express mandate to double exports in 5 years. And the first thing I said, coming from the border region and from California, I said, boy, if you're going to double exports, you got to play to your strengths. When you're talking about $1 billion of trade crossing the border just with Mexico every single day, that's a very big number. And just small increases on our trade with Mexico and Canada can have huge impacts on our overall trade relationship and achieving our overall goals. So we've been very focused on prioritizing our engagement with Canada and Mexico in the context of the NEI. We've launched something called the Mature Markets Initiative, and we're pursuing a number of other initiatives that really try to focus our efforts on this critical trilateral relationship. So the first key issue is, how do we improve trade flow at the border? And I won't go into all the speeches, but suffice it to say, 85% of the goods that cross between the United States and Mexico cross by truck. So one of the first things we had to do was fix the trucking issue, which was done. And I'm glad to see that through a joint effort, we've addressed that issue. The second issue is our two leaders came together and they, on the U.S. Mexico side, launched something called the 21st Century Border Initiative. You don't need me to tell you how important trade facilitation at the border is with world-class supply chains, just-in-time delivery. If you have to wait 2 or 3 hours at the border or longer, you're losing time and you're losing money. So the administration has been very focused on partnering with Canada and Mexico on border facilitation. The reality is, as you know, that many of our ports of entries were built years ago before our current trade relationship, and trade has expanded so dramatically it can't just keep up with the capacity. Just to give you a quick example, in Mariposa, in Nogales, that was built to handle a trade flow of about 300 trucks daily, and today that port of entry sees something like 1,600 trucks. So we have a massive need to address our infrastructure issues. So quickly, we've put our presidents got together, Calderon and Obama, and during the state visit, which I had the privilege of attending when President Calderon was in Washington at the White House, they launched the 21st Century Border Initiative. It has 3 principal focuses, which I think you're aware of: border infrastructure, secure flows of goods and people, and corridor security. And essentially, this initiative is governed by a binational steering committee, an executive steering committee, that developed a 12-month action plan to address many of these issues, including supporting the bilateral border master plan process for infrastructure projects in order to increase capacity, to expand trusted traveler and shipper programs, to explore how we can expand opportunities for pre-clearance, pre-inspection, and pre-screening processes for commercial goods and travelers. And we're seeing some good progress. The San Luis II commercial crossing in San Luis, Arizona, and the Dona Rio Bravo Bridge in Donna, Texas, were completed in late 2010, where we saw the completion of construction for 7 new northbound commercial lanes at the Laredo World Trade Bridge, and the groundbreaking for the new West Rails bypass project in Brownsville. This past July, we just completed the groundbreaking for the new Tornillo Guadalupe International Port of Entry in El Paso County, which is slated for completion by the summer of 2013, and other initiatives. And of course, this bilateral national steering committee is also focused on supporting the efforts here in the San Diego-Tijuana effort through the master planning process. I was talking with David earlier about some of the things that are happening, including the Otay 2 crossing and the airport crossing facility that's underway. So the point is, the border has been studied to death. We don't need any more reports. We need action. And that is exactly what the 21st Century Border Initiative is intending to pursue. We have gone out. Commerce's role in all of this, of course, we're not customs, so commerce's role really is to reach out to the private sector and to make sure that the voice of industry is heard and factored into this process. And I won't bore you with the bureaucratic processes we use, but we reach out affirmatively through the Federal Register, through meetings, through remarks like this to get input from industry. We factor that into the process, and we've heard loud and clear what industry wants to see, and we're trying to make sure that that voice is carried forward. We have a similar effort underway on the Canadian side. It's called the Beyond the Border Initiative. I won't go into all the details there, but it has a very similar apparatus. And since I see that our distinguished guest from Canada has left, I don't feel as obliged to talk about all of the Canadian elements. In any event, border facilitation is a major priority for this administration. It's something we're very aware of how important it is to industry. We're focused very hard on it. Actually, in just a few weeks in Mexico City, we'll be having the next meeting of this binational steering committee, and I look forward. I'm hoping I'll have the opportunity to attend. I'm supposed to be in Indonesia the few days before that, but I'm hoping to get back to make that. The next thing I want to say, just very quickly, is regulatory cooperation. I'm not going to dwell on this, and after a full lunch, I'll put you all to sleep for sure if I haven't already. But just know that, as you do know as businessmen and women, that our 3 countries take very diverse, often have very similar, if not identical, regulatory goals. We want to protect the health and welfare of our people and the environment. Want to make sure that unsafe products aren't introduced into the market. At the same time, we often take very divergent approaches to regulation. And as a result, if you're a business person or you're a company and you're doing business on all three sides of the border, you often have to make a part to meet one set of specs in one market and change it for all the other markets. And that's not efficient. It drives up costs. It hurts our competitiveness. So we've launched on both sides of the border regulatory cooperation initiatives that bring our regulators together. And again, commerce's role in this effort is to make sure that the voice of industry is heard. And the last thing I want to say about that is that what we're focused on is what I like to call upstream regulation, which is to say, so often in our markets, once we've already established regulations, it's hard to get the respective governments to undo what they've done to get to a harmonized approach. So what we're trying to do is identify those emerging sectors where the governments have not yet regulated and take a consistent approach to regulation by first asking, is regulation necessary? And I do want to say that all three governments really have undertaken significant efforts to reduce regulatory red tape. I know this is something that is not always well received and it's not always believed, but the fact of the matter is all three governments, Luis was mentioning the Calderon administration's effort, President Obama, through the Office of Management and Budget, has undertaken a comprehensive review of U.S. regulations and has identified several hundred regulations that have already been cut to the savings of some $10 billion, and that effort's still underway. And we're trying to push this trilateral cooperative approach to regulations, especially in these new emerging sectors. Think, for example, of the smart grid. Think of electric vehicles, nanotechnology. These are the industries of the future. Clean tech, some of the innovations that you all have talked about in this conference. We want to make sure that the governments, the three governments, don't over-regulate or regulate inconsistently in a manner that snuffs out innovation. We want to make sure that we reduce those transactions costs and enable companies to compete seamlessly in the North American region. So, without going into all the details, just know that there's a high-level regulatory cooperation effort in all three countries. We are working not just bilaterally, U.S. Mexico, U.S. Canada, but also looking to trilateralize many of these efforts. The last thing I want to say is just in addition to border facilitation and regulatory cooperation, the Commerce Department is also trying to support other initiatives to call attention to the border. Part of why I was in El Paso 2 weeks ago and why I'm here today, why Undersecretary Sanchez was in Mexico and was here just a few months ago, and why I hope we'll get Secretary Bryson out here or somewhere along the border soon, is we want to call attention to the fact that the U.S. Mexico border, and as with the U.S. Canada border, that this is an engine of economic growth. So much of the rest of the country, you lose sense of this because you live here, but so much of the rest of the country, when they think of the border, they think about problems related to violence and drugs and immigration and trafficking, and they don't really appreciate what a massive engine of economic growth and opportunity this place is. So that's why we're excited to be here today to call attention to these kinds of efforts. We're also looking forward to cooperating in some emerging sectors, and I want to say two quick things. One, part of our effort to call attention to the border means putting resources on the border, and I know that it's been difficult. We've had some challenges. I know Ann spoke earlier to the fact that we've had to reallocate resources from Tijuana, but we have an excellent team in San Diego, and we're also putting additional resources along the border. Ross Pruitt's here. He's a senior border trade advisor based in El Paso, but he has a border-wide effort. Jeff Bogart, excuse me. Jeff Bogart is here, who also has who is a lead here in San Diego, looking at the border export strategies. We've got a whole team of commerce. In fact, if all the commerce folks would raise their hands here, I want to make sure everybody knows who you are. We have a great team of commerce support, and of course, our Minister Counselor Ann Batcher from our embassy in Mexico is here with us. So these folks are focused like a laser beam on trade promotion. The other thing we're doing is we're trying to identify these emerging sectors where we have high levels of co-production, where we ought to be cooperating as three nations, trying to sell our goods and services in third markets, right? So it's not just about, hey, how do we streamline the flow of trade across our 3 countries, but what products are we building and where are they competitive internationally? And what are the issues and the challenges and the obstacles that our companies face trying to sell their products in India, in Brazil, in China, in some of these hot emerging economies? And how can we better cooperate on those fronts? And those sectors are well known to you. Some of them were discussed today. They include things like sustainable building products, automotive parts, medical devices, and other innovative technologies. So I hope that gives you just a sense of the breadth of efforts that the governments are undertaking, that the United States government is leading, and that we're working on collaboratively. I know it's late in the day, so let me just close by saying this. The government can do all it wants. It can talk all it wants. I can have as many speeches as I want. But at the end of the day, jobs get created locally. They get created by the private sector. They get created in places like this where industry leaders come together, take matters into their own hands, figure out what do we need to do, how do we need to work together. And I really see the government's role, candidly, as one of facilitator. What can we do essentially to get out of the way? There's a legitimate role to play. I want to be clear about that. I do believe government has an important, legitimate role to play in our investment in infrastructure, in particular, in coordinating our approaches to regulation, in helping to facilitate the setting of standards so that industry can compete on a level playing field, on enforcing our trade laws, not just here but abroad. But at the end of the day, it's the private sector that really drives job creation. And the President understands that, and the Commerce Department understands that. And that won't happen without the strong leadership that comes from Ruben and James and all of you, Steve, and many of you here, Jaime and Tijuana, but especially the business leaders who are here, who are running companies, who are doing this every day. So personally, I just want to express my profound thanks to you for taking so much time out of your schedules to spend a whole day talking about North American competitiveness. I hope that you will take the feedback that you've gotten in this conference and share it with us. Ruben, I hope there'll be a way for you to give input formally to the Commerce Department and to Economia so that we can factor this into our thinking about what we can do to support your efforts, because that's ultimately what we need to do. We need to be in partnership, and we need to facilitate the excellent leadership that's happening here locally on the ground. It's a real privilege and a pleasure to be with you today. I really appreciate your generous attention, knowing how late in the day it is and how tired many of you are probably of hearing a lot of speakers. But thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be with you, and I hope we'll have a chance for a few questions. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. If you want to just stay here, and we're not through with you yet. Luis? There are 2 big elephants in the room, as we say. That was mentioned before. One of them is, do you see, both of you, I'm just the guy back here, China as an opportunity, or is it just a competitor that we have to fight with for business?
On the Mexican side, we do see openness with any country as a key strategic issue. No? I mean, we understand the flaws of the Chinese model, and we are trying to get closer to them to understand their way of doing business, their way of growth. And the more we get close to them, we believe the more we understand how they operate. I mean, they won't be able to operate in a closed form for the next years because they do have to grow abroad, and they will have to take in more competitive goods and services. No, in fact, Mexico today has better manufacturing costs than China, and that is putting them to think about their models and to think about their economy and how to really take care of their yuan and maybe they'll go to the market at some point, but we have to be very close to them rather than closing to them. No, it's a huge market and they're growing. No.
I'll just say quickly, I think China is both an enormous opportunity and it presents enormous challenges. And The reality is, with the growth of the Chinese middle class, as they move, I mean, the sheer size of the market alone, and will continue to be a dominant theme in our international economic engagement, not just for the United States, but for the world. So it's an enormous opportunity as a market for our country, and I think we have to help our companies compete effectively in that market. But I think it also presents enormous challenges, and the reality is that the U.S. government is working very, very hard to hold China accountable to its WTO commitments. When it joined the World Trade Organization, it joined the international trade community, it agreed to abide by a set of rules and responsibilities and commitments, and it's our responsibility to hold China to that, hold them accountable to those commitments, and that's not been an easy undertaking, but it's something we're working very, very hard on, and in partnership with other countries.
Thank you. One of the other things is right here at the border, we are preparing next year to build a very unique facility, which is a way to cross the border for passengers into Tijuana International Airport. It's not been done before. I don't think it's been done anywhere. And there was a question from other persons, how can we maximize that to bring attention to our region and the cooperative efforts we're doing?
I'm sorry, how can we maximize?
The new airport crossing from San Diego directly into Tijuana Airport. You know, Tijuana Airport is literally a stone's throw from the border. Please don't do that. But please.
So the question is, how can we maximize?
How can we in other words, this is a joint cooperative effort between the two countries. Presidential permits have been issued by President Calderon and President Obama.
Well, look, I think that, as I mentioned in my remarks, overall border facilitation is a major priority for both countries. We've elevated this in the 21st Century Border Work Plan. It's a subject of ongoing discussion at very high levels between the two governments. And I think what we have to do is continue to push and hold us accountable to do what we can do. But I understand that there's also some local initiatives that have to fall into place as well. So I think it's a classic example of what I was saying. The federal governments have a role to play in this effort, and I think we have to do that in partnership with the local communities.
I would truly talk to the tourism boards and try to foster more tourism, because this is a key to seeing the region as one, and maybe the airlines, maybe speak about the new routes and new players into Tijuana and how to cross, maybe get close to any big events that are in the region, and market together, I mean, market and open up with a big bang, maybe invite the presidents or something like that.
I think inviting the two presidents here is a great idea. So consider yourself emissaries back to Washington and to Mexico City to get them here. 2012, they're both going to be in office, so we would like to have them with us. There was a question about the 21st Century Border Initiative. We've heard it from you, Mr. Secretary. We've heard a lot about it, but doesn't seem to be a way for us in the private sector to become a part of it. How do we get involved?
Well, that's a great question. That's part of why I'm here, in part. One is we have gone out with a formal solicitation for feedback, and although that window is formally closed, we're always open to receiving feedback. Second, we're actually talking with Mexico about how we can create a formal mechanism, a private sector consultation mechanism for this 21st century border. The plan, I think, does call for that kind of consultation, and that's something that, frankly, I'd welcome your suggestions on. I mean, we recognize that the voice of industry is critical. We have, because I know this sounds bureaucratic, but I hope you can appreciate what we're trying to do is ensure a fair and transparent process so that everyone has equal access to the process and everyone has an opportunity for their voice to be heard. That's why we use these mechanisms like the Federal Register notice to let everybody know. So we're not just going out to favorites, we're not just listening to big business, but we're hearing from small companies, SMEs. But beyond that, I think we also recognize that we need a formal mechanism, and that is still under discussion, and that's something I hope that when we're in Mexico City next month, we'll have an opportunity to pursue further. If the San Diego Regional Chamber specifically has a recommendation and some ideas, I'd certainly welcome that feedback.
Thank you. We're running late, and we want to thank both Luis Olive and Michael Comuñas for being with us today. So thank you, gentlemen. And I've also been told, please help yourself to the centerpieces. If you're ladies, help yourself to a centerpiece if you'd like to take it. If you're a guy, take it. You can tell your wife or your girlfriend you're sorry, because if you're a guy, you've done something to annoy her. Thank you for coming today. We'll see you next year.